Good afternoon and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. We're back with a new show every Friday at 2, and just like every week, with me is my good friend and co-host Jim Stamm. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How about you, Gary?
Good. We're both riding high after being on Mad Chad and Eddie the other day, so if you didn't have a chance to check that out, definitely do. It was awesome being able to talk about some different sports with you, man.
It really was. Yeah, those guys are already doing their thing, but they were nice enough to let us jump on. And man, it was fun, and it's a really good podcast episode. So I hope people check it out.
Yeah, now we just got to get Chad on here so that he can get embarrassed on his Pirates knowledge a little bit. But we're going to do a different type of show today, and we'll need our next guest to help us out with that. So let me introduce you all to yet another Point Park University graduate, because we can never have enough of them. He's a current contributor for Jays on the Couch, and that's the Blue Jays, in case you can't figure that path out. His name is Steve Fek. Steve, he's the self-proclaimed ugly American on that network, and I openly invite him today to just be, well, American, and say hello to all the Yinzers, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. This is like an honor for me. I'm actually on in my native country, in my hometown city here. You know, as opposed to
beautiful.
Yeah, as opposed to creating international incidents every time I do a show or a podcast for Jays from the Couch. So this is awesome.
Well, there's that, and we don't have like maple syrup candles or anything like that behind us, so it's not going to smell the same either.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
But as I mentioned, Steve covers the Blue Jays, and I'd like to talk to him about their rebuild, how it's been to cover that and the experience. But first, he's also seen what Ben Cherington can do firsthand. So let's start there, Steve. You've been keeping an eye on your beloved Pirates, even while you cover the Jays. Any parallels you can pull from Ben's time in Toronto?
I don't think there's any surprises with how he is approaching the build in Pittsburgh. I won't use the word rebuild when it comes to the Pirates. I mean,
neither will they. So,
well, right. I mean, and he's been consistent about that. I mean, really, they're an expansion team in so many ways. They are building this organization at every level, every aspect. Business, financial, they are reimagining what the Pirates have always been. And he is the perfect guy to accommodate that kind of things. Now, Cherington had a pretty low profile in Toronto. Okay. Right. I mean, more people probably know about his work when he was, the GM of the Red Sox. And not only did he build a World Series team in 3 years in Boston, he left behind guys like Mookie Betts and Devers and Bogarts and Christian Vazquez that were the core of the next World Series team for them. And that a lot of them are still there now. So I think...
We're just going to not talk about Sandoval at all? Or
well, I mean, Sandoval, bad signing.
Yeah.
But again, he went out and he acquired guys like John Lester and John Lackey.
Right.
Mike Napoli, all guys that were big contributors for that 2013. He signed Hanley Ramirez. I don't think there was a major league team around that wouldn't sign. Well, the Pirates, because they won't spend the money, but they wouldn't have signed Hanley Ramirez, to that big contract. Everybody wanted Hanley Ramirez at the time that he signed. So you're going to make mistakes, and Cherington doesn't hide behind him.
So he basically can turn on a dime and make it better if he does take a wrong path, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. And he'll fess up. I mean, when he left Boston, it was under kind of dubious, circumstances. They hired Dave Dombrowski literally in the middle of a game. And by the end of the game, he rendered his resignation. He never complained about how he was treated or how it was handled. He said, I just wish I could have done more, or that I could have fixed the mistakes that I did make and have the Red Sox back on path for the thing. So I think what you're seeing in Cherington now is very much what Red Sox fans saw, and the same kind of anger, confusion was there when he first took over Boston that is there now. Toronto, he came in, assisted Shapiro and Ross Atkins in the retooling of their farm system. They broke down all the big salaries, and when he came on board, he worked hand in hand with the international scouting director and the farm director to sort of develop strategies and policies, and that really helped the Jays develop, especially on the offensive, standpoint, guys that are going to probably put the Blue Jays in the World Series within the next 2 or 3 years. So,
and I think that's what I was going to ask you, Steve, is like his time there. And obviously, you've got Guerrero and you've got Bichette and whatnot. How instrumental do people see him having played a part in that with those types of guys? Because let's face it, those are special players. So how was that viewed from his time there?
I don't think that the Blue Jays fan base would really say Ben Cherington is a big piece. I think everybody really is focused on Shapiro and on Atkins. But that's also Cherington's nature and his strong point. He doesn't need the big spotlight on him. And another guy in the Toronto organization who actually I thought was going to be the Pirates GM, Tony LaCava from Oakmont. I mean, he does so many things on so many levels of the organization, but he just goes about his business and he does it. He doesn't try to bring attention to himself. I bet you half the Blue Jays fan base doesn't even realize that Cherington was part of the executive team in Toronto.
See, that's good insight, though, because, Jim, we were talking, we always talk about the communication issues with this team and how quiet they are when things happen. Like Joel Hanrahan just up and quit yesterday. Apparently he told the team 2.5 weeks ago he was going to resign. Nobody says a word. The first news that breaks of it is Hanrahan himself tweeting.
Right.
Now, to me, that's a misstep. But basically, just talking to Steve here for a couple minutes, maybe that's kind of Cherington's nature, is that he doesn't need to be out here telling us about all these little insignificant type moves in his eyes. But I guess when you're following a rebuild closely, it's difficult for me anyway to ingest that as insignificant. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I think Pirate fans in general, and I don't know, maybe it's like this with other organizations. Right now we're hungry for news and we're looking for anything that's coming out of that team and that organization. And, we're analyzing it and obviously we want to talk about it. And let's be honest, the Pirates haven't been great in the PR department for, well, it's been a while. And so maybe that's just a personal preference on our part that he's not really interested in getting, out in front of that stuff. And he's very eyes on the prize, so to speak. And that's just his nature. It sounds to me like that's what Steve is saying.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I want more, but, Yeah,
it is what it is, I guess, to an extent.
Yeah, it's the business we're in, too. We need something to talk about.
Right.
So we don't want to be left in the dark and guessing. And I'm sure that, in Cherington's mind and the front office's mind, with all the announcements that came out today, then they were going to address Joel Hanrahan. But obviously Joel Hanrahan was not happy with his role or his input, with the team. So I think he wanted to put it out first saying, look, I'm leaving. And that maybe caught the Pirates off guard a little bit, but
possibly,
yeah. Especially for now, don't be surprised if this information is more of a trickle rather than a flow.
Well, that's good to know.
I'll tell you what, man, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit of rebuild theory, okay? Let's talk about the path that Toronto's taken, the path that the Pirates are on, and really other options out there that teams can take to be successful in this league the way it's structured. All right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network, back with Jim and Steve. And what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about the different ways that teams can rebuild in baseball. We're going to try to avoid talking about when your lot in life really plays a role in that, because it's certainly different for the Padres to rebuild than it is the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Baltimore Orioles or even the Toronto Blue Jays. So years ago, the Toronto Blue Jays bottomed out and invested heavily in the international draft and the draft itself and traded high-priced players for prospects. And, now you're looking at a team that, it's hard to consider them anything but an offensive juggernaut at this point. So seems like pitching's been a little bit behind hitting, and they're trying to make up for that with free agency, which is arguably the scariest approach there is to rebuilding out there. The Pirates, I think it's profiling the same way. I think bats are coming up. I think arms are behind. I would say that I think we have a few more high-end, low prospects, high-end, low in the system prospects on the mound, but at the same time, I think it's profiling almost exactly the same, where we're going to come out of it a little short on arms, at least big top-end arms. There's different ways to do this. The Blue Jays have done it one way, and I think they started trying to go for it last year with really spending. Steve, are you satisfied with how this rebuild has gone in Toronto? What have been the roadblocks? What are some observations you have along the way?
Well, I think the Blue Jays had core players at the lower levels of their minor league system, just like the Pirates have kind of stockpiled that now. So over time, these guys are going to develop and come up. So you had, Anthopoulos signed Vlad Guerrero Jr., but then they drafted, Biggio and Bichette. They traded for younger guys that hadn't quite made it, like Teoscar Hernandez. They signed, Lourdes Gurriel. So they used all the various things you need to do: international draft, solid drafting, and building on what you already had. And they didn't really rush it. They looked at it, and I think this is where Cherington really had a big say in it, where he would look at it and say, okay, yeah, we've got all this talent. It's not necessarily major league ready talent, so let's not rush all these guys through the system. And, fans will get a little bit restless or whatever it would be, but, I think that's where he helped Atkins and LaCava and the other staff there kind of look at it and say, okay, yeah, we've got the core there. We need to be patient. We will get there, but we need to be patient. And in a lot of ways, he's doing it now here in Pittsburgh. There was some talent there in the lower levels. It was pretty much devoid at AAA and AA. Yeah, there were some players.
You're not going to offend us, Steve. We're good.
I know.
It is what it is, buddy.
Yeah. So he looked at, you lose 2020. So really last year was the main year where he's looking at the system, and he's like, well, I really do kind of like a lot of the things we have, but we're not really ready to make a bigger step yet. Right. So okay, we have to be able to take all the guff. We're going to trade Jacob Stallings for a seemingly nobody that's going to help our roster. Well, Thompson will be in the rotation, but for more prospects, and they're going to take more hits and more hits. But this year, if those players continue to advance, then in essence, the Cherington timeline that he's put in place in both of his major league stops, everything's right on time. Might be a little bit late, but yeah.
I'm with you. I keep telling people I think this year is going to be fun because you start to actually see some of the product coming up. Next year, things really start to get fun. You got a whole second wave starting to come through then. And I think you start to understand the picture a little better.
Yeah, know what? No, I was just going to say it's interesting. You talk about Steve's talking about the patience that's involved. Something that caught my eye today was Derek Shelton, and he had talked about expedited development, and that got my attention because I wonder how realistic that is in baseball, and B, it's the first I've heard of that, where everything else has been very much as Steve describes, which is completely slow, steady, cautious approach, not going to rush anybody, let the timeline, play out like it should. So it was just an interesting comment. I'd be interested to hear what both of you have to say about it.
I mean, as far as him as expediting, I didn't see it yet. I mean, I guess Rodolfo Castro was kind of put on a fast track, but I felt that was almost more because they protected him on the 40-man and didn't have any options and needed somebody up, that could play. I don't think it was necessarily they thought he was ready. I
almost took it as something like that they were talking about moving forward. That was going to be the emphasis. So I don't know. Steve?
Well, moving forward, that kind of sounds... That's suspect to me too, because
yeah, I agree.
We'll see, like when we see the assignments for minor leagues, because if Henry Davis starts as a grasshopper and he stays there past the All-Star break, I got some questions about expediting. If Nick Gonzalez starts in AA and isn't in AAA by midseason, I've got some questions about expediting. If Matthew Frazier remains in AA instead of starting in AAA, even though he's not on the 40, I have some questions.
It was I'm just not a curious comment.
Moving at all. That's the thing that scares me the most is these bats are coming. I feel the bats coming. I see the bats coming. The arms aren't coming. Quinn Priester, to me, is very much so on a methodical pace through this system. And when you draft an 18-year-old, you can expect that. But at the same time, now you're looking at a 22, 23-year-old by the time he gets here. That's not ideal. So
do you want a fully polished 22 or 23-year-old?
You mean like Mitch Keller was supposed to be? He was supposed to be. He was
right.
Number 7 prospect in all of baseball. Right. That's about as polished as you can get.
Right. Tyler Glasnow, too. Everybody, Tyler Glasnow. We don't care about Cole and everybody else, or, we have Tyler Glasnow. Sometimes it just doesn't work in a particular situation. Exactly. I don't know what Mitch Keller's situation is. Honestly, we
don't either, so.
Neither did Joel Hanrahan. So.
Yeah. I mean, some players.
Not his problem anymore.
Some players look great on the sidelines or in spring training, but they just cannot seem to apply that knowledge in a game. The Blue Jays have a guy like that in Nate Pearson, who throws 100 miles an hour. He's got all these just nasty pitches, and then for some reason, once you get any little step back or any little blip on the radar, and he kind of falls apart, and then he overthrows his slider or overthrows his fastball, and it just falls apart. And Mitch Keller reminds me a lot of that kind of a pitcher.
It's a great comp because I've thought about that too before with Pearson, actually, because almost failed prospects or prospects that are on the danger point of failing, they're literally always in rumors for trades to the Pirates for stars. So I've already heard the Blue Jays interested. This is fan stuff. Don't take this as like something credible, but I've already heard all the Blue Jays are going to want to trade for Brian Reynolds, and we'll get Pearson, and they go off and name Alejandro Kirk and all these guys that are borderline and maybe going to make it, should have, Manoah, all the different players like that. So that's where we kind of hear those names most often.
I think too, like what's interesting about it is as we sit here and talk about, and look, I don't want to overanalyze one thing Derek Shelton said today, but it is the lockout, so maybe I will.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
You talk about expedited development, and and I took it as more of like an organizational approach, when really it's kind of a player approach, a singular player, and how they respond to development, challenging a guy.
He does say they do say player centric constantly, so maybe at some point we're going to have to believe them.
Yeah. So to me, that's tough to implement across an organization, especially in baseball, when we see how long it takes some guys to develop. So to me, it becomes drilled down to the actual player. But and it sounds to me like that's kind of where you guys are thinking too. So I don't know.
All right, I'll tell you what. Let's stop trying to hammer the Blue Jays into this conversation and let Steve geek out a little bit on his Pirate fandom, because that's why he wanted to come on the show anyway, to talk Buccos a little bit.
No, I mean this is terrific, seriously, because I'm a big believer you have an American League team and a National League team.
I gotta do that. I gotta get that, because it sounds like the best of both worlds.
Right, because up until next year, when we have the universal DH, they were two distinct brands of baseball. I mean, right. I'm old enough that I remember when there was no DH. I'm old enough when there were no Toronto Blue Jays. The first 10 years of me being a baseball fan, there were no Toronto Blue Jays. I came to the Blue Jays because one of my high school mates, Mark Lamangelo, got traded there. That's how I started, following the Blue Jays and going to college in Pittsburgh. It's not that bad of a trip up to Toronto and back. I mean, when you're 20, 21 years old.
It used to be anyway, yeah. Right now it's
now it's like nearly impossible. But, so that's how I kind of fell into the Blue Jays. But I resisted.
It's good that you're happy to talk about it, because I lied. I actually have one more question I wanted to ask you about the Blue Jays.
Okay, that's fine.
So years ago, I remember the exchange rate being an issue for the one Canadian team in the league as compared to the rest of the league as far as spending. How has that affected everything in Toronto, or is it not an issue anymore?
Oh, it's a huge issue, because again, you're paying in U.S. dollars, but you're getting the majority of your revenues in Canadian dollars. So it's sort of like, the comparison I would say is like, okay, a free agent can sign in Texas where there's no state income tax, or they can sign in Pittsburgh where there's a tax on just about everything.
So tax on this show even.
Yeah. So really, it's that kind of a deal. And that's why you see, like in their last couple of big free agent signings, Ryu got the extra year. Right. Springer got the extra year. Gausman got the extra guaranteed year. Even with Barrios, with the extension that they gave him, it's 7 years. It wasn't 5 years or 6 years. They have to guarantee that extra money. So you have to be more careful, perhaps, on how you're throwing your free agent dollars around. I mean, and Blue Jay fans are just as bad as any other fan. But, we have to sign this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy, and we can have a $400 million payroll. No, you can't. At some point you have to be relatively smart about it. And I realize here in Pittsburgh, where if they spend $60 million, we're thrilled. But they have $64 million last year? Oh, that's awesome. They're up to $64 million out their payroll. That's terrible that you're looking at that way. But
I don't know anybody that looks at it that way.
Yeah, I know that's for sure. But
we're on to full scale bitching now, brother. I mean, like I know how it used to be, but not anymore. We're full on complaining now. I mean, I think right now he would have to do some pretty drastically stupid things to make the payroll high. As a matter of fact, if they instituted a floor of $100 million as was proposed, I'm not sure how the hell he would do it right away. It would have to be grandfathered in for a couple of years. It usually are anyway when they do these things, but it would take some doing to get there.
The MLB proposal is immediate. The MLB is saying you need to do it right now. Now, there would not be penalties involved, but there's been talk about, okay, so year one, you acquire up to $100 million. We understand, especially since it's not going to get settled till February or March, the CBA. They're going to wait till after football's done and all the other stuff is going on before they probably try to settle it. But after that, just like there is the penalty for spending above the competitive balance tax type of thing, there is talk about, okay, we're going to have a soft floor. So, okay, so you only spent, you spent 15% below the 100 million. You're going to lose 15% of your revenue sharing if you're eligible for revenue sharing. So that's what's going to motivate a team like the Pirates. And it works to their advantage because now they can not only keep guys that are arbitration eligible, they can really work hard to either, when they do make trades, bring in guys that are signed to relatively team-friendly deals. But it also allows them the flexibility, I think, long-term to kind of re-engage the fan base. Pirate fans just assume that, I mean, if their favorite young player makes it to the first arbitration hearing, we're popping champagne corks. It's like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. We actually offered arbitration to somebody good. It's going to force them to, whether it be a 2-year or a 3-year arbitration, depending on the CBA, these guys are going to stay in town. So you're going to naturally be paying more money through a second arbitration or even a third arbitration award. So getting to that floor eventually will not be as bad. And right. What is the one team that still has an outstanding grievance from MLBPA? It's the Pirates. Yeah. It still hasn't technically been solved. There's been no punishment, but that grievance is still open. Every other team solved the issue, not the Pirates. So a hard floor or soft floor, I think it solves a lot of issues for Pittsburgh.
Well, I think it only solves the issue if they actually fix the revenue sharing and put some kind of a lower cap on. I think if the spread remains as ridiculous as was proposed, it's not going to do anything. So, Jim, any thoughts on that before we take a quick break and jump back into another subject?
Well, it just depends on if we're going to just not talk about the Blue Jays anymore, because I just wanted to talk real quick about.
You got your Vlad. Man crush you got to talk about.
I do, man. I want to talk about Vlad. I want to talk about what it's like to see that dude. You tell me, Steve, and tell me contractually where things stand with a guy like that, because Pirates are thinking about trying to maybe extend Reynolds. They got an even bigger decision and a younger guy. So tell me about him and what's it like to see him.
To watch the Vladimir Guerrero of 2021 is like having all of your dreams come true. Because again, he wasn't in the best of shape. He struggled a little bit, in his first 2 major league seasons, but it was just unbelievable. He was as close to automatic as I have ever seen. Okay, Bonds at his best. Carl Yastrzemski in that 67 year where it seemed no matter what, I mean, he could fall down and hit a ball to the gap for a double. Guerrero was unbelievable. The fact that he was not the AL MVP borders on criminal. It really is. Shohei Ohtani was great. Okay, but it's not, MVP is not the best player. That's why you had the Hank Aaron Award. He was just everything you could ever hope for a player on your team.
So you're saying out of all the guys you've ever seen, he ranks up there in ability. Is he that good?
I do. I mean, I think he's better than Tatis. I mean, he and Tatis are close, and they train together, and they're friends. I think long term, he has the chance to be better than Tatis and be perhaps the best player in Major League Baseball. I honestly believe that.
I think he's better than Tatis too. So.
Yeah, and tying it back into my Pirates geekiness. There's a guy in the Pirates organization. When I see him, and we've only seen snapshots of him, with all the COVID, I haven't been able to get out to a lot of minor league games or whatever. When I look at O'Neill Cruz, he's not going to be as good as Vladdy. He's going to be Vladdy-like. I've
never seen somebody do like small finger motions for such a big guy before. I'm
from New Jersey, so we have two ways to communicate with our hands.
It's a Jersey thing.
Right, or we drop F-bombs. We'll use it sort of like punctuation, not necessarily just to use the word. I really can't do that on this podcast, so I'm going to really work with my hands.
Very good, though. I mean, the O'Neill Cruz comparison is interesting. I mean, maybe I'm a little too close to it, and maybe I'm a little too Pirates pessimistic. I'm not ready to make any kind of declaration like that yet. Jim and I went to his first game this year because, we're both really excited to see the kid play, and he was impressive. But he was also taking some swings that, man, he really shouldn't be taking, and that's something that's got to get cleaned up. And, we start picking apart like, oh, yeah, on defense, man, it doesn't look natural when he's going down for the ball. Should he be playing there? So I guess as a Pirates fan, somebody that's involved in this team drastically, maybe we're more of in the show me territory where I need to see it before I can start, making any kind of comparisons. But I'm comforted that you feel that way.
No, I'll take what
you've seen.
I'll take Vladdy Light. Vladdy Light, however you want to say it.
Right. I mean, and we as Blue Jay fans were there, especially in 2020 when he was overweight. He was a guy without a position. Yeah, he was a third baseman. Yeah. I mean, technically, he was a third baseman, but O'Neill just has the basic, I think, he really truly sees the whole field. I think he will eventually become a better situational player as well. I am as excited as you guys to see what it brings for Cruz. And Jim, you were talking about the extra expectations being put on these younger players. I think Cruz is one of those guys. Cruz, Cole Tucker, Mitch Keller, the guys that really are there on the precipice of perhaps becoming established major league players. I'm not saying they all will be, but I think that's where Shelton is referring to those guys, saying, we're going to expect, we know what you could do. We want to see what you are going to do, and we're going to expect you to live up to at least a portion of your potential.
So real quick, contractually with Vladdy, they going to get a deal done with him? How much would it take?
I don't know that they'll get a deal done with him. I think that's the disadvantage of having a player whose dad played in the majors. You're going to get advice saying, no, write it out. I mean, they will do everything that they can. Personally, I really think there's a chance, and I know most projections aren't showing this, that he is going to set the record for first-year arbitration eligible contract.
Well, and it's interesting with Brian Hayes, that factors in as well, with his dad. So it puts those situations in a little bit different light than normally, I think. So that's a good point.
Man, I'll tell you what. The Jays and the Pirates have a lot more parallels than I thought they did, really, before we started talking here. This is a good breaking point. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk some more Bucco baseball. right, everybody, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. We're going to try to focus on the Pirates a little bit here. We'll shade it with some Blue Jays here because we definitely want to feed off of Steve's experience a little bit more. But thought we'd start by talking about the coaching a little bit because, you know, Joel Hanrahan, at least for fans' perspective, kind of came out of nowhere. And the team obviously liked him. They tried to extend him. They offered him an extension to stick around in the minor leagues. Joel wanted to be in the major leagues. I understand that. No grudge, no hard feelings. Go do what you got to do. Today they had another exit, Roberto Andrade, who's been with the team for almost 20 years as a bullpen catcher, and an assistant coach is leaving his position for San Diego. So I guess what I'm wondering is, have the Pirates potentially bought in on Marin a little too much, and some of his underlings are starting to defect? What do you think, Jim? I'm going to let you start with that because we're local. We should know this stuff, right?
Well, we should have a good idea. I'll tell you what, I think if I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to pretend to know. I think that's a really...
Well, then show's over. We have to pretend to know.
No. I'm not doing that to anybody, good, bad, or if I don't know, I'm just going to say it. I just, it seems like there's some credence to that. Like you said, he's been with the system how long? 20 years?
Almost 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. So
one of the few Spanish speakers on the team too. Now that Cora's gone,
right? So
not great.
No, I mean, and who knows who they have? Who knows what their mindset was, or maybe it just simply comes down to sometimes, just like with the Hanrahan situation, is guys want other opportunities. They want to change.
Yeah.
They so maybe some of it's geared toward what the Pirates want to do, but maybe it's just other guys looking for better opportunities and maybe getting them. So I don't know. I think maybe it comes down to the individual situation a little bit.
I mean, I know everybody on this show today has written about baseball and teams, some semi-professionally, some professionally. I guess my eye is kind of trained on the anomaly. I want to see what that weird thing is. And for me, that weird thing is that two pretty high-ranking underlings of Marin decided to up and quit within a day of each other. And Steve, I know you're an old news hound too. What does that make you think? Is it lead you to any kind of conclusion, or what have you seen from Oscar Marin that makes you a believer?
I think he has a knack for touching on what individual pitcher strengths are, as opposed to trying to apply an overall strategy, to a pitching staff. I mean, yes, he has pretty strong ideas and he has certain training deals, but I really do think he just has a knack at looking at an individual pitcher and say, well, okay, look, what about, rather than do an overhaul, what if we just tweak this? Or what if we try, the two-seamer rather than the four-seamer? He seems to be that kind of pitching coach. How that carries over to Joel leaving, I mean, that one kind of caught me off guard, like it seemed to have caught you guys off guard as well. I do think it's more of a matter of that I think in his mind, he should be at least the assistant pitching coach, since the Pirates don't have one. I mean, unless they added an assistant pitching coach today, they don't have an assistant pitching coach.
No.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, and he could at least be that. Where you break it down and say, okay, Joel, you take care of the relievers. I'm going to really focus on the starters, but I'm still the guy. But this is what we can do. As far as the bullpen coach, I want to say he's from Mexico, so going to San Diego might just be a logistical thing, being closer to home in time. I could be wrong on that, but I believe he...
Sure. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to create controversy here. I just, again, I'm looking for the anomaly, and to me, it's all in the pitching staff right now. And to me, that's a little strange. And I get what you're saying about Marin. That's certainly the reputation that he brought in here. I haven't seen any evidence of it. I'm not seeing that one thing he's making better for one guy. I'm seeing guys that are coming up looking more ready than they are a month down the road. I'm seeing guys that look better when they arrive than when they ultimately get demoted. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah,
if you want to tell me why you're seeing that, that's what I'm looking for.
I think reputation-wise, that's what he's known for, or that's what he's trying to implement. I tend to agree a little bit with Gary. Is like, I don't know that I've seen it enough. I will say that if it's ever going to happen, they've got 10, 11 guys they're going to be trying to fit into a starting rotation. We'll really find out if there's anything to it. And that maybe is what is a little bit curious. To Gary's point is with Hanrahan is that they're probably, if Marine didn't do well this go around here coming up, there probably would have been an opportunity there, I would have thought. So the fact that he chose to leave even with that as maybe something that was coming down the road, little curious.
I mean, you get into like 3 years of operating someone's bad playbook, you're not going to get another job. You know what I mean? So if he really disagreed with what he's being told to preach, maybe that was the motivation. You know, there's a lot of different ways you could look at it, and a lot of them are going to be guesswork. I mean, we have what Joel said. So far, it looks like he just wanted to work in the MLB, and the Pirates didn't want to put him in MLB. But Steve, for me, it's a little weird that the Pirates openly called him a fixer last year, openly pitched him as somebody they sent problem children to, praised him for the response of Mitch Keller when he came back after his little Fix Me tour, and then suddenly he's not good enough to get what he wants with the organization, which is really a pretty cheap promotion for a position I've been arguing they need for a year.
Well, right. And I absolutely agree with you that there should be an assistant pitching coach. I believe the other 29 major league teams have one. And if it's not all 29, it's 27 or 26 of them have it.
I couldn't tell you currently, but when I researched this topic like 5 months ago, all of them had them except the Pirates.
It's the standard at this point across Major League Baseball.
Right.
Same with hitting, which we also don't have. So
I will say this. Cherington and his staff probably really believes that it is more important at this stage of the build, of the development of this franchise, for a guy like Joel Hanrahan to be able to go and sort of be like the roving minor league pitching guru, because that's where the future lies. At the major league level, you have some guys that are going to be okay. I mean, I'm probably a little higher on JT Brubaker than I think you guys may be. I think that
he's my favorite out of the group. So.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, having listened to some of your other podcasts, it seems like you guys still on the show me stage. I don't know. And then going back to a point you made earlier, there's a famous comic strip where a dad's sitting there and his kid comes home and he's all downtrodden. And the dad asks him, how'd your game go? He goes, oh, I was throwing a no-hitter until the big guys got out of school. I think that's what's the situation here with some of these Pirate guys that they've been bringing up in 2021. O'Harry, for example, I mean, he looked really good his first things, but then he sort of like seemed more hittable. I think it's just you're cruising, and then suddenly the reality of, well, maybe I don't quite have everything put together where I'm a reliable major league pitcher quite yet. I think that eventually catches up. But look at the Atlanta Braves staffs, that everybody says, probably the best pitching staffs ever. Glavine, Smoltz got hammered when they got brought up by Atlanta. They got hammered. And the Braves just said, keep on going out there. You're going out there. You're going out there. You're going out there. And eventually they learned how to become better pitchers by dealing with that adversity and trying to figure out ways with the stuff that they had to not allow that to happen again and again and again. And I think that's the advantage of
youth. So that's the advantage of youth. So when you do look at the depth chart of pitchers they have, if you want a reason for optimism, that's it. They got 11 or 12 cracks at pretty youthful pitchers that could turn into something if they got the right guy. And Jim, I think that's where you and I fall, is we haven't seen anything as far as evidence goes that Oscar Marine's the right guy. And I think 2020 really hurt the cause because, 60 games wasn't enough to evaluate anybody. And realistically, everybody he had on his pitching staff for the most part is gone. Mm-hmm. So really, we have who we had last year. Large amounts of that are not returning next year. So again, it's almost a whole new turnover for Oscar Marin. So when does the evaluation phase end? Because we're talking about a team that we feel by 2023, 2024 should be starting to make some noise. I'm not gonna go crazy and say World Series, whatever, but they should be starting to make some noise and competing in that division. I don't want to waste a year with a coach I don't believe in. Does he have to show something this year, or do they move on?
I think he has to show something. I mean, I think if you've got 10 or 11 guys, and look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that these guys are all good or great or anything like that. There's a lot of question marks. But if you're not pulling something out of 2 or 3 of these guys, at least on some level, whether it's figuring out they don't belong in the starting rotation, they have some success in the bullpen, whatever it is, you got to start seeing it now. If they come out and just it's a mess and a disaster, I mean, I don't know how you could possibly keep him on after this.
I'm in total agreement with you, but Steve, it sounds to me like you're basically saying when you got young pitchers, you kind of got to be patient with every asset around them, right? So you're saying stay the course, trust the process. I guess for me, that'd be a hell of a lot easier for me if Oscar Marin had any kind of a track record before coming here. It's not like we hired somebody that's done this before and we can call back on, he's had this experience and he's learned. For me, you got an analytics-driven guy trying to find his way. They're not supporting him with an assistant coach. His underlings are starting to drop off. And I'm just not seeing improvement on the field with anybody that matters. That's a scary recipe for me. So as you're following a team that's rebuilding, how soon's too soon to pull the trigger? Do you give him more than this year?
I think it depends more on overall performance, but I agree. This is a must-do at every level of the organization. This is a must-show improvement year. The Pirates aren't going to win the NL Central. I think everybody agrees to that. As bad as some of the NL Central teams might end up being in the long run, they're not going to win the NL Central this year. But if they are showing, some improvement in team ERA and runs allowed. I mean, if these guys are going more than 3 innings and 4 innings, in a start, if you're starting to get guys going out there pitching 5 and 6 innings on a regular basis, you can look at that and say, okay, we're still not there. We don't have the wins yet,
right?
But we are making these incremental improvements. So then maybe you give them one more year. But I mean, if they
that's
don't
a good
show
point though, because we tend to look at it more like, hey, Keller's not getting better. Hey, Brubaker almost died halfway through the season. Hey, Wilson came from Atlanta and looked okay, and then he got hurt and he's not doing good. So we tend to look at it player by player. You're probably right. Cumulative is the best way to approach that. And I'm embarrassed as somebody that covers the Pirates to say that I haven't really thought of it like that for the pitching coach. I tend to think of it as individual players. So, but Jim, I know you wanted to ask Steve something rather important about the rebuild here, so I'm going to let you take the floor for a moment.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you just said, Gary, is if nothing else, it's another way to look at it. Like you said, you get very player-centric, focused on a certain one's development. So just hey, it's just another way to look at it. Now, what I would be really interested in hearing from our distinguished guest today, since he's been down this road a little bit before, he's a little older and maybe a little wiser. So I want him to.
I've listened to his show. He's not that much wiser, but.
Well, we'll find out here in a second, because Pirate fans are gonna if they don't listen to anything, they're gonna listen to this part. Tell me, what's your advice for Pirate fans going through the rebuild, or whatever you want to call it, having you've been through what's going on in Toronto and being a little bit more ahead in that process. So what would be your advice be to people from Pittsburgh that follow the Pirates?
I would say appreciate the little improvements, the little victories, because that's all you're really going to get right now. Okay, you're not going to be the Braves or the Dodgers or the Giants or the Padres in 2022. You're not. So appreciate the good things that are happening, the continued, shining of Brian Reynolds and Brian Hayes being healthy and just turning in. He's probably the best defensive third baseman in the game now. And that's saying a lot with Chapman and Arenado and those guys that are out there. He's the best defensive third baseman in the game right now. Appreciate that. Take that little improvement. So if the Pirates win, 72 games,
yeah,
that's an improvement. Be happy with that. Enjoy these young guys starting to kind of get their legs under them and doing, it might only be streaky, it might only be flashing of kind of things. That's what you need to enjoy. Because you can't be here if you're down on this step. You need to go
to
this step. Right. And again, I understand. If you're a Pirate fan and you say, well, you have to be patient. If somebody would shoot me for saying that, and then they went before the judge and say, look, I've been a lifelong Pirate fan, and he told me to be patient after all we've been through the last 20, 30 years, he'd get off. Say, okay, yeah, justifiable. Okay, that's fine. All right, that's okay.
I love the analogy. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just hoping that I could actually start my car when I go out later, that there aren't Pirate fans already putting things underneath my car. But that's how you have to approach it. It's not going to happen right away. It simply is not. I think another good thing, we've been talking about the Blue Jays, but go back to those Braves teams and even the Mets teams, of like the early 80s when they first brought in a competent general manager and they were starting to bring in talent. That's, nobody expected the Braves to turn around that quickly, but still, you saw those flashes in 87 and 88 and 89. You knew that was going to be a good team.
Right.
That's where you need to really be focused here. And I will tell you, to walk some of you Pirate fans off the ledge, I am more excited about what the Pirates will become with what they have in their farm system now, and with Cherington at the helm, and Travis Williams too, because you have to have a good, solid business strategy, than I am about the team that I cover on a daily basis, the Toronto Blue Jays, who everybody is saying is going to be a playoff team and probably a World Series team in the next year or two. Long term, I am more excited about the hometown Pirates than I am about the Blue Jays.
Well, you heard it here.
Jim?
You heard it here first. Steve's saying they're going to work out better than the Blue Jays. So, no, I'm kidding you. But no, that's interesting. It's a reminder that these rebuilds and what they're going through, not always a straight line, and you do have to start looking for glimpses. If you start seeing the glimpses, then maybe you've got something.
Right, man. Steve, I'll tell you what, I really appreciate the insight today. It was really nice to kind of just understand from another market's perspective how this process can play out a little bit. And I enjoyed a lot of the parallels there. I think that was a really cool conversation. So thank you so much for joining us. And,
thanks for having me. Seriously, this is like the highlight of my 2021. Since my front office,
now I feel bad.
Chance.
I feel like I need to send you some whiskey or something.
Obviously, I have plenty of whiskey and drink on a regular basis with some of the things that I say. But no, this has been a thrill. I mean, I really appreciate you guys having me on and be able to talk some Pirates rather than just Blue Jays for a change.
Well, it was good stuff, man. Appreciate having you.
Yeah, and folks, you can find everything that Steve does at Jays on the Couch. He's a contributor there. He has his own show. It's on
the On Fek Circle.
The On Fek
Circle,
yeah. On Jays on the Couch Network. And on Twitter, he is Feckless Wonder, which is hilarious. Anything else you'd like to say, sir, as far as how people can get a hold of you or where they can see your content?
No, that's basically it. I mean, at Feckless Wonder, join the hate train. I respond to everything, whether it's positive or negative. I believe in keeping a conversation going. I don't care if you agree with me. I'm not trying to get you to be on my side. I want to have great baseball conversation. There's nothing better than great baseball conversation.
Yeah, that's what we're all about too. So sounds like we align with Toronto in more ways than one. Jim, how would you like to say goodbye to everybody today?
Listen, Twitter all the time. It's for the city _412 or at Jim Stamm 22. Always down to talk about Pittsburgh sports and anything Pittsburgh in general. So Pirates, Steelers, Pitt, Penguins, and so good talk today, fellas.
Yeah, hey, one more shout out for the Mad Chad and Eddie show. Make sure you do check out this week's episode. Jim and I had such a good time doing it, and I'm pretty sure we're going to end up doing a lot more like that. Very well received so far, so let's keep it rolling. We're all off next week. The entire network, except for the Daily Shots, is going to be down next week for the Christmas holidays. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Enjoy your time off. Enjoy your families. Enjoy whatever it is you do during this period of time. It's been an honor being with you guys this year, and we really appreciate all the support you've given us, and we can't wait to have more great baseball conversations with you next year, and none better than our live opportunity on January 22nd at the North Shore Tavern. We really would love to have as many of you come down as possible at 2 o'clock and be part of the live show. So without further ado, take it away, Ben.
Let's go Bucs!